The doofus pulls back his hand to punch as Aerudit wonders if his teeth will get messed up. His eyes are closed shut before Rosalie comes flying in with a kick to the face. The lady is stunned as the idiot falls to the floor and Rosalie lands on the ground. Aerudit stares as Rosalie has her fists clenched. Rosalie mentions grimly about how she understands the situation as the two other idiots start pulling out their weapons. They show off their daggers to her as Rosalie flips her own dagger while mentioning how she's not sure why they feel confident fighting against her with daggers. One of them goes in for a slash asking what the hell she is talking about but hits air as Rosalie easily dodges. She then gives him an uppercut using the handle of her blade. The other guy tries to go in for a stab but she knocks the weapon out of his hand as she notes how she is the Duchess. She then throws up a kick ending the man's ability to reproduce, as she mentions how killing these guys would be bad for her reputation. The guy falls over foaming from the mouth. As both idiots lay on the floor in great pain, Rosalie notes how unfortunate it is that her knife got scratched. She then calls for a nervous Aerudit who sits on the floor. She offers him her hand and tells him that they should go now. Aerudit seems to be enchanted by the Duchess as he says yes. Later in the nighttime, Aerudit walks off the carriage as Rosalie calls him by name. She then hands him a dark blue box and tells him to take it. He opens the lid as he asks her what it is. His eyes widen and light up at the sight of it. It appears to be a necklace as Rosalie tells him it is a glass strap that she went to buy earlier. She then smiles as she tells him she thought it would suit him well if he used it. As he carries the gift, she tells him now he may rest. Aerudit stares at the gift and places his hand over it. Later in a well-lit room, Rosalie asks someone something. The man grabs a piece of candy and then mentions how Bella is currently trying to meet up with Marquis of Wendell. Rosalie then asks again why this is important. Nathan then tells her she previously mentioned how Marquis of Wendell is a coward and that it seems as if nothing appears to be happening from his end. Rosalie holds her chin as she wonders if she missed something. She then decides that she must make the sale of the Gordic mines well known. Suddenly, a piece of candy is then present right in front of her mouth. Nathan then feeds her the candy as she sits stunned. She holds her chin as she mentions how sweet it is. She then angrily stares at Nathan, who is now completely giggling. He licks his finger like the ultimate light skin as he tells her eating something sweet will make her feel better. She angrily tells him no as he continues to smile. He tries to offer her another candy as she holds up her hand, mentioning how he just licked his finger. He seems shocked by her mentioning this. She continues to hold up her hand as he then drops the candy. He then proceeds to burst out laughing at all this as he then asks Rosalie if she has ever been in a relationship before. She questions why he is asking as Nathan mentions how Rosalie is getting funnier than he thought. He then tells her that Bella has asked him to come with her as she will return to the mansion soon. He mentions that Rosalie could prepare some bait for the Marquis of Wendell. He also mentions how if the territorial war starts, then they will try to take possession of the property. Rosalie sits and ponders while Nathan stares at her with a dumb look on his face. He calls her name once before going in with a harassment kiss on the cheek. She jumps away from him as he mentions how he sensed her heartbeat go up. She yells at him for this, but he is long gone and he yells at her to take this as a compliment. Very non-monetizable words are said in the manner as even the butler outside wonders where these chills came from all of the sudden. Later we hear Rosalie yelling at her knights to not miss while using the crossbow. They need to get their range faster than anyone else and take cover. The men yell understood as she then yells for them to work as a team, and if anyone gets shot, someone else swaps in. We see men running out carrying crossbows as Rosalie yells to not miss the shot while another set of men are doing push-ups. She notes how the firing range squad training is going well as she yells at them to go again. She is so fine. As a carriage moves forward, it is noted that the Novetter Road issue has been resolved now as well. She notes how the busy days have also found their peaceful moments and a field of what looks like wheat can be seen. Rosalie notes how she finally has a day off as her hand brushes on the plants. She notes how glad she is that she made that deal with Divi, but that being alone in this field makes her feel lonely. Side note, but she talking about be lonely when she has a 3-man harem going right now. This a load of BS. She then wonders if it's maybe due to the cold. She then wonders about how if she had someone next to her at times like this, maybe she'd feel less lonely. Someone then says that it looks like Rosalie got her first. She turns her head to see someone walking towards her. She questioningly says Divi as we see him standing before her. Rosalie asks why he is here, to which he tells her he finished his part of the deal, so he's here to get fresh air. A breeze then blows by as Rosalie tries to cover her hair. Divi then stands before as he does the cliche giving her his coat move. He then stands smiling before Rosalie thanks him and notes how warm it is. She then asks if he has informed the Imperial Palace yet. Divi smiles as he tells her since the Duchess likes informal visits, of course he has not informed them yet. She then questions how she did not see His Highness's portal request as he then dangles a necklace saying he used this. It is a Duke's art pendant for transportation. He tells her it was discovered over 300 years ago by the first Duke of Judihard as Rosalie stares at it and asks where did he find it. He then tells her he stole it as she then gives him a blank stare. She then hands it back to him as he tells her not to worry since the imperial officials didn't even notice. She asks if there are any records of this thing's use, to which he says probably not as it is 300 years old. She then mentions how someone could see him using it, to which he tells her he is good at hiding suspicious patterns. Rosalie then brings up his reward and asks what he wants. To this he asks for her to give him a place to play pranks. Rosalie's face turns blue as she says no way. She asks if he means a workplace, to which he tells her yes. She has a grim look on her face as she mentions how proudly he is nodding. He then puts his foot forward and says he plans on leaving the palace and doing his work from the Duchess's mansion. He leans right next to her as he asks if this isn't too hard for the Duchess of Judihard to work out. She tells him fine, and that there will be one condition, which is that his presence will be completely confidential. He smiles as he tells her he will assure that. She then stares at his eyes as she stands speechless for a moment. She mentions how they are like snow and clear as the sky. He asks her if she likes clear skies like this, to which she says that she likes them more than cloudy skies. I guess she doesn't like mushroom-shaped clouds then. Divi then says well as Rosalie now stares up. He tells her she looks better on bright sunny days, which seems to stun her for a moment. She then closes her eyes and has a slight smile. She mentions what a stupid joke that is. The pair then walk off into the bright yellow field. Later it is sunset as Divi holds onto the coat that he gave her. He pulls out some leaves that were left on it. As he holds them he lets out a smile. Someone then calls for His Highness as they say it is Barry. He tells the man to come in as he sits by his desk. The servant alerts him that the lady of Count Ammon's has arrived to see him. The servant also mentions that the lady told her to contact Divi when he got home safely. Divi then sits at his desk staring at a letter. He mentions how he has to do all this unfinished work before he can even go to the Duchess's manor, as we see a pile of papers on his desk. He then notes how he truly does not have time to meet up with the snake for now. Divi tells the servant to let the snake know that he is very busy right now and won't be able to meet up, to which the lady says yes, your highness. Divi is then stunned by what appears to be a loud ruckus going on. He stands up wondering what is so noisy, as we then see a green slimy snake calling his name. She crawls to him mentioning how he said he'd be busy for a while. Divi asks the snake what is going on. The dirty reptile asks if there is something wrong. Divi says there is not, but that he has a lot going on right now. He tells her it will be hard for him to meet with her for a while. The python is unhappy. The long scaly creature then slowly hisses, asking if this is because of Rosalie. Her ugly face looks downward as she asks if he has errands with Rosalie. She then looks up saying she knew it and that Divi has changed and is getting weirder after not taking her advice. Divi then calls the viper by name and tells her simply to stop. She tries to protest, but he turns away saying that they need to calm down first before talking again later. She slithers right behind him and tells Divi to wait. She constricts on his sleeve as she tells him she did not mean it. He puts his hands on hers and calls her name. She yells his name back, smiling before he brushes her hand away and says that he will see her when he's all done. She darkly says what as Divi continues to walk back into his room. The door is closed shut on the fake friend. She then holds her head up as she mentions how this is all due to Rosalie and that Divi had never done this to her before. She mentions how she hates that Rosalie has taken Divi from her and that this is annoying. The snake also notes that it is annoying to talk to Rosalie as well and that she hates how Bianca is getting pampered by Rosalie as well. The fake friend then starts to walk, mentioning how the first person to betray her was Rosalie. Her face looks like it came out of a horror movie as she stands thinking about all this. Rosalie is later seen mentioning how the knight and the firing squad seem to be doing very well with their training and that they can now move on. Aaron says the training on his end is going well too, as Rosalie calls this a relief. She then tells Aaron she needs to go now then, as she then opens the door and is stunned. She says what the as we then see Divi has become a coach potato. As he lies, she mentions how he actually looks handsome as flowers start to appear. She then sits right before him as she notes how it doesn't feel real. Her hand is then grabbed all of the sudden by Divi. He then gives her his stare as he lays. She then asks how long he has been awake. To this he tells her that he's been awake long before she checked out his face and says that maybe she wanted to see him. She then notes that he has seen it all then. As he gives her his version of the light-skin stare, she then looks back thinking about something else. She looks up at the window now as she mentions how she has not even looked at the sky today. His hand then covers her face as he starts to sit up and says that she should be looking at him. His hand is by her face as she seems quite flustered. This moment is then cut short by Dolan calling for the Duchess and alerting her of his presence. He tells her he will enter now as she yells that she is changing her clothes and to wait outside. Divi asks if she will be changing her clothes here as she then covers his mouth with her finger and tells him that she can hear him clearly. Dolan asks the Duchess if something is wrong as Divi sits speechless. Rosalie then tells Dolan that she is good and asks what he wanted to tell her. Dolan tells her he got word that Bella would like to visit the mansion as soon as possible. Rosalie says she sees and asks if there is anything else. Dolan tells her there is not and tells Rosalie that he will go now then. After he does, we see Rosalie sitting uncomfortably as the crisis is now averted. Divi then grabs her hand as she gets stunned by this. He then puts her finger right in front of his open mouth. She nervously asks what the hell he is doing before he tells her it's just a prank as she then swiftly pulls her hand away. She lets out a deep sigh as she tells him he is too old to make pranks like this. He then grabs her again and leans his head right next to hers. She tells him he is too close as he then scratches his head and tells her it does not matter what age you are when doing pranks. She stares at him while internally saying really. She then notes how unpredictable Divi can be. A few days later we see a well-kept garden. As Rosalie is walking, someone calls for the Duchess. She asks Aerudit what is going on. He holds a paper smiling as he tells her he is on his way to read some paperwork about the sale of the Gordic mine. He asks if she is done with training yet, to which she says yes. She then pats his shoulder again as she tells him good job. This prompts him to fix his own glasses as he says yes and watches her walk away in the garden. He is not the only one watching as somebody stares at the two of them from his window. As Rosalie walks into a room, she notes how she is glad that the mine got sold for a higher price than expected. She then looks up to see Divi and mentions how he's back again today. She is puzzled as he swiftly makes his way over to her. He then grabs her hand once again before placing it on his shoulder to her utter confusion. She asks what he is doing as he turns his face away, blushing while saying prank. She then pulls her hand away saying she sees and mentions she will go now as she has other important matters to deal with. Divi is stunned at how she is ignoring him before he asks where she is going. Rosalie closes her eyes as she mentions the forest near the duchy. This seems to confuse him as he says and he breaks a sweat. Later they are both in the forest as Rosalie notes how Divi has tagged along again. She carries a bucket as Divi mentions how she is drawing targets all over the forest. He tells her the Duchess is amazing for coming up with all these training methods. She then turns around to hand him a bucket of paint and the brush. He asks me too, to which she tells him that since he tagged along it'd be more fun if he helped. We later see him painting red circles on the tree. He turns and flips his brush as he stares at Rosalie. He asks if she wants him to paint it over there, to which she says yes and that it is too high for her to get up there. He tells her alright as his heel is then seen leaving the ground. He then smiles as he holds her up in the air to her shock. We later see that Divi is carrying Rosalie while he is standing on the branch of the tree. Rosalie has a stunned expression on her side profile. The two of them are both standing on the branch as they both stare off into the distance at the view of buildings. As she stares while he holds her arm, she notes how she hates to admit it but that it's nice that she always gets to enjoy beautiful sceneries with His Highness. She then closes her eyes in peace as she notes how the breeze is always pleasant when she is with Derivus. His feet then land back on the grass-covered floor. As he holds her, she mentions how they have already arrived now, to which he tells her he knows. She then says also before telling him that she has a proposition. She asks if he would be interested in playing tag with the knights. She tells him a suit and robe will be prepared for him and that he can wear it to get in around the knights. He smiles as he mentions how fun this sounds but that the robe sounds frustrating, so he will use this instead. Rosalie stares as she notes this is the same hair-changing color item that Nathan used. She then tells him good. Later she is seated silently in her room as someone starts to yell outside. Nathan is climbing the balcony as he tells Rosalie long time no see, to which she says he is late. Nathan tells her Bella is obsessed with him so he could not get away from her as he walks in. Rosalie then asks what he wants to talk about with her as Nathan then mentions that Bella took him to a meeting with Marquis of Windell. He mentions how Dumb and Dumber have taken her bait and will declare a territorial war in 3 weeks. Rosalie then lets out a smirk as she notes how it is finally here. Nathan sits beside her as he asks if he should kill the pair immediately. She tells him no and that she will play with them in the territorial war as this was her goal. Nathan is quiet before he lets out a smile, and then laughs out loud thinking about how this was her goal. He then tells Rosalie that it will be fun before mentioning how Bella will be back to the mansion by tomorrow. Rosalie mentions how Bella will be looking to steal the Duchess's property, and to keep an eye on her. Nathan then asks if Rosalie knows he is having a hard time before mentioning how her strong perfume is giving him goosebumps every day, and that maybe by touching her he will be cured. She tells him to not come near her and warns him not to do that nonsense like last time again or else. Nathan then holds up both hands saying he was kidding. He then begs her for head pats and that he only needs them for 5 minutes. He then says 3 minutes then, as she seems to have finally deemed him as enough, and gives him the pat. Later, back out in the forest, she yells for her men to find where the targets are and shoot them with crossbows, and that the one who shouts the most will be rewarded. Sounds can be heard in the forest as men run around with their crossbows. One arrow flies in the air and hits a bullseye. The men yell to move on and to hurry. Rosalie stands behind a tree as the soldiers carry on. She notes how they all seem to understand the terrain and notes they are doing a good job as they are improving. She then looks up and wonders something. She notes how if Devi could do that jumping, then she should be able to as well. She then closes her eyes as she feels the air all around her. She then opens them saying go, but then while in midair seems to have messed up. Her feet seem to have slipped off the branch as she now falls over. She notes how she did not expect the ricochet to be this strong as she closes her eyes, noting a bone might break. Then we see the feet of a man who seems to always be around her. Devi tells her it will be okay and tells her to relax her body. A large snap can now be heard as Rosalie now turns back yelling for His Highness. She asks if he is okay, but he simply responds by asking her if she got hurt while holding her face. She asks what about him and if he is alright, but he pulls her to his chest and lets out a sigh. He tells her he is okay as she lays there. He then laughs, noting how he is glad he did not get hurt and how he really cannot take his eyes off of her. Rosalie says she did not expect this and will compensate if he is injured anywhere. He tells her he is okay and asks to stay like this for a while. Later, he can be seen getting up as the adrenaline seems to have worn off. She then yells for him to take his shirt off right now as he nervously says okay. We then get to see his back, which seems to be badly bruised. She notes how he is really hurt and then asks why he was trying to hide his injury. He tells her it isn't that bad since he used his aura when he fell. Unhearable words can be heard as someone is nearby. The pair look up stunned as Devi notes how if they get seen like this they will get in more trouble. Rosalie stares back as she notes he is right. He tells her to let him help then as he grabs her hand. They then are seen hiding together near a rock and behind some bushes. They really doing us dirty like this, man. Thanks for joining me on this recap, as this is the end of the current story. If I learned anything from this story, it's that you'll be reborn as a hot girl if the US drops a bomb on you.